All right, so um, looks like we're taking a deep dive today into the world of adaptogens.
Yeah.
You've been doing a lot of research on them.
You
I see
have.
a stack of articles and studies here.
hmm
So clearly you're interested in how these natural substances
Yeah,
can help us manage stress.
definitely. And you know what's fascinating about them is that they're not just a quick fix. Like
Right.
some over-the-counter remedies, they actually help your body adapt to stress over time.
Yeah, that's what really caught my eye too, is like they're not just masking the stress, but actually helping our bodies handle it better.
Exactly.
So I've heard about this fight or flight response,
Right.
but how do adaptogens actually play into that whole system?
So the fight or flight response, it's all about survival, right? Our
Right.
brain senses a threat and boom, our body pumps out cortisol,
Oh, cortisol.
the stress hormone.
Right.
Short term, that's helpful.
Yeah.
But these days, it's not saber-toothed tigers stressing us out, right?
No.
It's like work deadlines, social media, the constant news cycle.
It never ends.
It's like our fight or flight switch is always on.
Always slipped. Yeah. And that constant cortisol isn't doing us any favors.
No, it's not good for you.
I know it's linked to all sorts of health problems.
Exactly. Chronically high cortisol can really wreak havoc on your system.
Yeah.
Anxiety, sleep issues, it can even impact your immune system.
Wow.
And what's fascinating is that adaptogens, they seem to work directly on what's called the HPA axis,
Okay.
the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis,
Okay.
which is basically the command center for your stress response.
Okay, so it's not just about feeling a little calmer. It's about actually getting that whole stress response system back in balance.
Exactly. That's the
Isn't it?
goal.
I see.
It's like adaptogens are giving your body the tools to kind of dial down the stress response when it's not really needed.
I like that.
Yeah,
Okay, so from what I've been reading, there are quite a few different adaptogens out there.
there are.
So is it a case of different ones working for different kinds of stress?
Yeah, there is a huge variety, and they do seem to have different strengths. You know, you mentioned ashwagandha in your research.
For
It's
that.
one of the most popular ones, and studies suggest it's particularly good at actually reducing those cortisol levels.
Interesting.
Some research even suggests it can help with sleep quality, which is often disrupted by stress.
Yeah, sleep is definitely a big one for me.
For a lot of us.
I'm also seeing a lot about rhodiola.
Yeah.
What's the story with that one?
Rhodiola is really interesting because it seems to have a significant impact on both mental and physical stress.
Oh, wow.
There's research suggesting it can help with focus, mental fatigue, and even athletic endurance.
Mm.
So it might be one to consider if you're feeling that kind of burnout on multiple levels.
Yeah, that's interesting. Sounds like rhodiola might be a good fit for the kind of high-pressure, always-on lifestyle that so many of us are dealing with these days.
Definitely.
What about some of the other adaptogens out there? I've heard of holy basil, but I'm not really sure what it's supposed to do.
Well, holy basil is another great example of an adaptogen that's been used for centuries in traditional medicine,
Right.
especially in India, and it's known for its calming and relaxing effects and is often used to help manage anxiety.
Okay.
Some people find it really helps them to unwind and de-stress at the end of a long day.
I see. So ashwagandha for potentially better sleep, rhodiola
Mm.
for mental and physical resilience,
hmm
and holy basil for calming anxiety.
Yes.
Are there any others that kind of stand out as being particularly useful for certain situations?
Well, you know, from your research, I see you've been looking into ginseng.
Yeah,
It's a classic energy booster, right?
it is, yeah.
It's been used in traditional Chinese medicine for ages, and modern studies are starting to back up some of those traditional uses.
Okay.
It looks like you're particularly interested in its potential for enhancing stamina and physical endurance.
Yeah, I'm kind of intrigued by how some athletes are using it to boost their performance.
Right.
I'm wondering if there are any specific types of ginseng that are best suited for that.
You're thinking of eleuthero,
Okay.
also known as Siberian ginseng. And it's often used by athletes who are looking for that extra edge in endurance and recovery.
Interesting.
Some studies suggest it can actually help the body adapt to physical stress more efficiently,
Oh, wow.
which is key for those athletes pushing their limits.
Okay, so we've got this whole range: ashwagandha, rhodiola, holy basil, ginseng, eleuthero.
Yeah.
And they all seem to work in slightly different ways.
Mm-hmm.
But if someone's listening to this thinking, okay, this sounds great, but where do I even start?
Right.
What advice would you give them?
It's tempting to just grab the most popular one off the shelf, but the key is to really think about your own needs and what you're hoping to address.
Okay.
Are you mostly dealing with mental fatigue, or is it more about physical exhaustion?
Right.
Are you struggling with sleep, or is anxiety your main concern?
I see.
You really want to match the adaptogen to your personal stress profile, not just jump on the latest trend.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And it's also important to remember that while adaptogens can be incredibly helpful, they're most effective as part of a holistic approach to well-being.
Things like good sleep, a healthy diet, exercise, and, stress reduction techniques like meditation can all work together to support your overall resilience.
Right. It's not a magic bullet, but a tool in your toolkit.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered some of the big name adaptogens and how they might help with different types of stress.
Right?
But how do we know if they actually work?
Yeah.
Is there real science backing this up?
That's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
There's actually a growing body of research on adaptogens, and some of the findings are quite promising.
Okay, good.
For example, studies on ashwagandha have shown reductions in anxiety and improvements in sleep quality.
So there are measurable results.
Yes,
Yeah.
and research on rhodiola suggests it can enhance mental focus and reduce fatigue even in people experiencing burnout.
Wow, so it's not just anecdotal evidence, there's actual scientific data to support these claims.
Exactly, and the research is ongoing, which is really exciting.
Yeah. Scientists are starting to explore the specific mechanisms of action for these adaptogens, looking at how they impact cortisol pathways, neurotransmitter activity, and other physiological processes.
That level of detail is fascinating.
Yeah.
It's one thing to say this herb helps with stress, but it's another to actually understand how it's working at a cellular level.
Absolutely. And the more we understand these mechanisms, the better equipped we'll be to use these adaptogens safely and effectively.
This is all super interesting. I
Yeah.
feel like we've laid a great foundation for understanding what adaptogens are and how they might be helpful.
Yeah, I think so.
But now I'm really curious to dig into some of the research you've provided
Okay,
and see what specific studies are saying.
let's do it. There are a couple of studies in particular that I think you'll find really insightful, especially when it comes to the effects of adaptogens on cortisol levels and the stress response.
Well, that's where we'll pick up, I guess, next time.
Sounds good.
We'll dive deeper into the research then. Okay. So we're back and ready to
Yeah.
geek out on some research.
Yeah.
You mentioned a couple of studies that really stood out to you.
Yes.
What can you tell us about them?
Well, one study that caught my eye was looking at the effects of ashwagandha
Okay.
on people experiencing chronic stress.
Okay.
And the researchers found that after taking ashwagandha for 60 days, participants had significantly lower cortisol levels
Oh,
compared to a placebo group.
that's really interesting.
Yeah.
So it's not just a subjective feeling of being less stressed. There's actually a measurable difference in their cortisol.
Right. And that's key because chronically elevated cortisol, like we were talking about, is linked to so many health problems.
Right.
So if ashwagandha can help bring those levels down,
Yeah,
it could have some pretty significant implications for overall well-being.
absolutely. What about the other study you mentioned?
The other one focused on rhodiola
Okay.
and its impact on mental fatigue and burnout.
Okay.
And the researchers looked at a group of doctors
Oh, wow.
working in high-stress environments.
Definitely a relevant population for this topic.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
And they found that the doctors who took rhodiola for 12 weeks showed significant improvements in their mental performance, including reduced fatigue, better concentration, and even improved mood.
It's like the perfect test case for an adaptogen doctors working in those high-stress environments.
Absolutely.
And it's encouraging to see those positive results.
Definitely.
Does the research say anything about how long it takes to start seeing the benefits of adaptogens?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
And it seems to vary,
Okay.
depending on the adaptogen and the individual.
Okay.
Some people report feeling a difference within a few days or weeks, while others might take a month or two to notice significant changes.
I see.
It's important to remember that adaptogens are generally not a quick fix. They're more about supporting your body's natural processes over time.
So it's more like building resilience gradually rather than
Mm.
expecting those overnight results.
Exactly. It's like training your body to respond to stress in a healthier way. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got some solid research backing up the claims that adaptogens can help with stress.
Right.
But what about the practical side of things?
Yeah.
If someone's listening to this and thinking, okay, I'm convinced I want to try this,
Yeah.
how do they actually go about incorporating adaptogens into their daily routine?
Well, there are a few different ways to do it.
Okay.
Adaptogens are available in various forms:
Mm.
capsules, powders, tinctures, even teas.
Right.
Capsules are really convenient for on-the-go powders, can be mixed into smoothies, or yogurt tinctures can be added to drinks or taken directly.
Oh, okay.
It really comes down to personal preference and what fits best into your lifestyle.
I've seen some pretty creative recipes online using adaptogen powders.
Oh, yeah.
People are adding them to everything from lattes to energy balls.
That's great. It's great to see people getting creative with it.
Yeah,
There are definitely ways to make adaptogens a part of your daily routine without it feeling like a chore.
exactly. And what about dosage? Is there a standard recommendation or does it depend on the adaptogen and the person?
Dosage can definitely vary.
Yeah.
It's often a good idea to start with a lower dose
Okay.
and gradually increase it as needed, paying attention to how your body responds.
Mm-hmm.
Some adaptogens, like rhodiola, can be stimulating, so you might want to take them earlier in the day.
Okay.
Others, like ashwagandha, are more calming and might be better suited for evening use.
So it's kind of a personal experiment, figuring out what works best for you.
Right.
And I imagine it's always a good idea to check with your doctor,
Oh, absolutely.
especially if you're taking other medications.
Always wise to consult with your healthcare provider before starting any new supplement regimen, especially if you have any underlying health conditions or are taking prescription medications.
Okay, so we've talked about the science, the practicalities of using adaptogens, and the importance of checking with your doctor.
Right.
What about sourcing? There are so many brands out there. How do we know which ones to trust?
That's a really important point. The supplement industry isn't as tightly regulated as pharmaceuticals,
Right.
so it's crucial to choose reputable brands that prioritize quality and transparency.
Okay.
Look for companies that provide third-party testing to ensure the purity and potency of their products.
So third-party testing is key. That means an independent lab has verified the quality of the product.
Exactly.
Is there anything else we should be looking for on the label?
It's also a good idea to check for organic certification and sustainable sourcing practices. You want to make sure you're getting the best possible quality while also being mindful of the environment.
Right, making choices that are good for both our health and the planet.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to do a little research on the company itself.
Okay.
Look for brands that are transparent about their sourcing, their manufacturing processes, and their commitment to quality.
So we're talking about being informed consumers, not just grabbing the first bottle we see on the shelf.
Exactly. Your health is worth it.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. We've gone from the science of how adaptogens work to the practicalities of choosing the right ones and making sure that they're high quality.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up,
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious to get your take on something.
Mhm.
Adaptogens have been used in traditional medicine for centuries,
Right.
but they seem to be having a real moment right now.
They are.
Why do you think that is?
I think there are a few reasons for that. First, there's a growing awareness of the negative impacts of chronic stress.
Mm-hmm.
People are realizing that stress isn't just an inconvenience. It can have serious consequences for our physical and mental health, so they're looking for natural ways to manage it.
That makes sense. People are looking for solutions that are both effective and aligned with a more holistic approach to well-being.
Exactly. And second, there's a growing body of scientific research that's starting to validate some of the traditional uses of adaptogens.
Right.
As we've seen, studies are showing that they can have a real impact on cortisol levels, stress response, and overall well-being.
So it's not just ancient wisdom anymore. There's science backing it up.
Yeah, exactly. And I imagine that makes people more comfortable trying something new.
Definitely. And third, I think there's a general shift towards more natural and preventative approaches to health.
Yeah.
People are looking for ways to support their body's own resilience
Yeah.
rather than just masking symptoms with pharmaceuticals.
You're right. It's about empowering ourselves to take control of our health.
Yeah, and adaptogens seem to fit perfectly into that mindset.
They do, and I think that's one of the reasons why they're resonating with so many people right now.
I'm really glad we had this deep dive.
Me too.
It's given me a whole new perspective on stress
Yeah.
and how we can manage it naturally.
Yeah.
But before we say goodbye, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the future of adaptogens.
Okay.
Where do you see this field going?
It's an exciting time for adaptogen research. I think we're just scratching the surface of what these powerful plants can do.
Yeah.
As more research emerges, I believe we'll see even greater integration of adaptogens into mainstream wellness practices.
So they're not just a fad, they're here to stay.
I think so. They offer a natural and effective way to support our well-being in a world that's becoming increasingly stressful and demanding.
I completely agree. It's about creating a more resilient future, both individually and collectively.
Well said, and I think adaptogens have a vital role to play in that.
This has been such a fascinating conversation.
It has.
I feel like I've learned so much, and I'm sure our listeners have too. But before we wrap things up completely, I want to bring it back to our listener who sparked this whole discussion
Yes.
with their research.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious to know what they're taking away from all of this.
Yes.
What stands out to you the most?
Right.
What are you going to explore further? We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Let us know. What questions do you still have? What piqued your interest? We are always open to continuing the conversation.
You know, it's amazing to think about these adaptogens going from ancient remedies to now having all this modern research backing them up.
It is fascinating.
It really feels like we're rediscovering this
Mhm.
connection between nature and well-being.
It is a really interesting blend of traditional wisdom and modern science.
Yeah.
And you're right, it does speak to this innate human desire to find balance and resilience, especially in our modern world.
You know, as we've been talking about all the potential benefits of adaptogens,
Mm.
I've also been thinking about the bigger picture.
Hmm.
If more and more people start incorporating these into their lives, could that actually have an impact on the way we approach healthcare in general?
That's a really interesting question.
Yeah.
I think there's a real possibility that adaptogens could play a role in shifting our healthcare model
Okay.
towards a more preventative and holistic approach.
Okay.
Instead of just treating symptoms after they arise,
Right.
perhaps we can focus on supporting the body's natural ability to adapt and thrive.
I love that moving from a reactive approach to healthcare to a more proactive one.
Right.
And adaptogens could be a key part of that shift.
Exactly. They empower individuals to take an active role in their own well-being,
Right.
working with their bodies rather than against them.
It's not about replacing conventional medicine or anything like that,
No.
but it's about expanding our toolkit
Hmm.
and exploring these complementary approaches.
Absolutely. It's about having options and finding what works best for each individual.
Okay, we've covered so much ground in this deep dive.
We have.
We've explored the science, the practical applications, the sourcing,
Mhm.
even the future possibilities of adaptogens.
It's been a journey.
But as we wrap up, I want to leave our listener with one final thing to ponder.
Okay.
We've talked a lot about adaptogens as these tools for managing stress and enhancing well-being.
Right.
But what if we take it a step further?
Okay.
Could exploring adaptogens be a gateway to a deeper understanding of our connection to the natural world?
That's a beautiful thought.
Yeah,
It's like a reminder that we're not separate from nature, we're a part of it.
yeah.
And perhaps by tapping into the wisdom of these plants, we can rediscover a sense of harmony and balance within ourselves and with the world around us.
I love that. And on that note, I think it's time to bring our deep dive to a close.
Okay.
We've explored a lot of information today, but ultimately the journey of discovery continues.
It always does.
So to our listener, we encourage you to keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep learning.
Yes.
And as you delve deeper into this world of adaptogens, remember to listen to your body, trust your intuition, and embrace the wisdom of nature.
We'll be here to guide you along the way.
Until next time, be well and stay curious.